She said I wasn't family, so we left them at the airport. A few days back, we were supposed to head out on this big vacation with my wife's family. They do this every year, get the whole crew together, pick some destination, take a full week off, and just go. My wife and I, both 30, had just gotten married not too long ago, but we had been together for 3 years before that, so I was actually looking forward to being included in this whole tradition for the first time. The year before, when we were still engaged, she asked me to come along, but since her folks never said anything directly to me, I felt kind of out of place and told her I would sit it out. This year, though, her mother Sandra actually invited me personally, which, to be honest, felt like a pretty big step. I had always gotten the sense that Sandra was not exactly fond of me. She never said anything outright, but I could tell she treated me differently, kept her distance, gave off this cold vibe. It probably started when my wife moved in with me. Back then, she had still been living at home, but once we started dating seriously, she packed up and moved out. That is when Sandra's attitude began to shift, and I guess she never really got over it. I always figured that Sandra blamed me for taking her daughter away from the family home. But I never forced anything. My wife had been living on her own since her college days, and moving back in with her parents was never going to be part of the plan. I was never going to live with her parents either, and we both agreed on that early on. She told me straight up that she was not interested in living under her folks' roof after marriage, and I respected that. It was never a question. I do not think that was unreasonable. I made sure she knew I was on board, and as long as we were good with each other, I did not care what anybody else thought. Thing is, Sandra had this whole idea in her head that all the kids should stay close by. She had already managed that with her older daughter, who lived just down the street even after getting married and having a kid. They still saw each other all the time. So, when my wife moved in with me and chose to keep some distance, Sandra probably saw that as a betrayal. Meanwhile, my wife was happy. She had grown up with no privacy at all and finally had space. But I am pretty sure Sandra blamed me for that setup, even though I was just supporting what her daughter wanted from the beginning. I had done everything I could to fit into their family, stayed polite, respectful, made the effort, but nothing seemed to be enough. Then, just a couple days before the vacation, Sandra made it perfectly clear how she really felt. We had been planning the trip for months. I had helped pick places, worked on the itinerary, been involved in the back and forth. From what I had heard, my in-laws usually covered all the expenses, and it was no issue for them financially. My wife told me not to worry about it, so I never did. I had no problem paying for myself if needed, but she said it was taken care of. Then, the day before we were supposed to leave, Sandra invited me over to talk. My wife was still wrapping up some work, so I went over alone, thinking it was just to go over some final details. Instead, she told me that I would need to pay for my part of the trip. She said the vacation was for family, and since they did not see me as part of the family yet, they were not going to cover anything for me. She said it in this fake nice way, like she did not want to ruin the mood, but she wanted me to understand her position. And then she took it even further and told me the reason she did not see me as family was because my wife and I did not visit enough. Unlike her son-in-law, who showed up regularly, we apparently kept too much distance, and she felt like she barely knew me. I was stunned. I had worked hard to build a relationship with them, and she just blindsided me right before we were supposed to leave. She could have said something weeks ago. Instead, she waited until the last minute to drop this on me, and it felt like it was meant to humiliate me. Still, I held it together. I said I understood and told her I would pay for my share. She looked a little thrown off by how calmly I reacted. I think she wanted a bigger reaction, but I was not going to give her that. I left right after that and went straight home. I was angry, but more than that, I felt awful. When I got home and told my wife what happened, she was furious. She immediately said she wanted to cancel the whole thing and had no interest in spending a single minute of vacation time with her mother after that. I also told her something I had never said out loud before, that I always had a hunch Sandra did not like me and that this whole thing kind of confirmed it. I told her how Sandra's behavior had changed once she moved in with me and that it was not just about visits, it was personal. She listened, and then she said something that made everything make sense. She said her mom had always been obsessed with keeping the family together, and when she announced she was moving in with me, Sandra had been really upset. She had not shown it much, but my wife remembered how tense things got at the time. It all clicked. Sandra never got over that and had just been holding it in. But none of that justified the way she had treated me. So, my wife and I decided we were not going to just cancel the trip. That would have been too easy. We wanted to make a point. So, we came up with a plan. We would show up at the airport like nothing was wrong, just like we were going with them. But instead of boarding the same flight, we booked tickets to a different destination. We would ditch them right there and head out on our own vacation. By the time they figured out we were not on the same plane, we would be long gone. It was the perfect way to give them a taste of what they dished out, and that is exactly what we did. We showed up, smiled, acted like everything was fine, then disappeared and sent them the message loud and clear out. We showed up at the airport right on time like we said we would, greeted everyone, acted normal, then told them we wanted to step away for a few minutes to take some pictures before boarding, and nobody batted an eye because they were too busy chatting among themselves. As soon as we were out of sight, we walked straight to another airline counter, bought 2 tickets for the next flight out to a place we both liked. That place ended up being San Francisco. Originally, we were all supposed to go to Miami, but honestly, this felt better, just me and my wife, away from the people who clearly did not want me around. By the time we had the tickets and got on board, her family must have realized something was off because our phones started blowing up. Calls, messages, all of it, we ignored every single one. Airports are huge and crowded, and they had no chance of finding us before we were already on our way out. The flight was smooth, no drama, no last-minute scene, and when we landed, that is when we finally responded. My wife sent a message in the family group chat and explained everything. She told them what her mom had said to me the day before and made it clear that since I was not considered part of the family, we figured it made sense not to tag along on their family vacation. Simple. Direct. We figured there might be some pushback, maybe some frustration, but we did not expect the whole family to turn on us like that. Everyone was angry. They said we abandoned them, caused a panic, and were selfish for disappearing. Funny thing is, they still went on the trip. They took the flight to Miami, they got there, and everything went ahead without us, so I did not really get what all the outrage was about. Still, they kept hammering us for not saying anything ahead of time. Most of their anger was pointed at me. They told me I had no reason to assume I would be covered on a vacation with them, especially when I had not made any effort to become close to the family. They said I should have offered to pay for myself from the start, that I barely showed up to their dinners or group chats, that I was not involved enough. They said I treated them like an ATM and acted entitled. That one hit hard. I earn my own money, always have, and never once did I ask them to pay for me. They told me Sandra was only trying to be honest and set boundaries, and I blew it out of proportion. I fired back and told them that their expectations were not just unrealistic, they were nuts. Weekly dinners? Try every other day. They called it once a week, but it was practically constant. And they expected us to drive out there after long workdays just to sit at the table so they could say we were trying. That was not fair. Even before we got married, we were visiting them once a week or every 2 weeks, doing our best to make time. But none of that seemed to count. They ignored all the effort we had already made just so they could paint me as the problem. So I laid it out. I reminded them how much I had done to try to fit in, how I had been respectful, polite, involved where I could be, and if that was not enough for them, then nothing ever would be. They said we were acting immature, ruining their vacation, making it about ourselves. Fine. Maybe we did, but they had no right to act like this was all on me. I wanted to say something else too, because I saw a bunch of people online claiming I was isolating my wife from her family, and that is a pretty serious thing to throw at someone. Let me make it clear, this was not just me. My wife agreed with everything we decided. She was the one who wanted distance from her family in the first place. She wanted us to live away from them and visit once in a while, not every day. We were both on the same page. Her family was upset from the beginning, but we stood by our decision together. I did not twist her arm. She wanted this. I supported her. That is it. So all this talk about me controlling her or separating her from them is just garbage. Her folks keep saying I expected a free ride, that I should not have joined the vacation without offering to pay, that I never tried to connect with them. But none of that is true. If they had told me up front that I needed to cover my part, I would have. Or I would have stayed back. No issue. But to wait until the day before and hit me with the whole "you are not family" thing felt personal and mean. It was planned. It was meant to hurt. And they are acting like I am the one who crossed the line. No. I did what anyone would do in my place. I chose not to go where I was not wanted. Now they are all mad and saying we ruined everything. But we are here, in San Francisco, and we are enjoying ourselves. Let them be angry. We are not going to feel bad for setting boundaries. They do not get to guilt trip us for not giving up our personal space. Yesterday, they sent another message, this time directly to me, because they knew my wife was ignoring them. They said whatever I was trying to do to their family was not going to work, that their bond was too strong for someone like me to break. That was the most dramatic thing I have heard in a while. I am not trying to break anything. I just wanted to be treated with respect. And the moment I stood up for myself, they decided to label me the villain. They still do not get it. My wife made these choices with me. I am not pulling the strings. She is an adult. She wanted out of that environment. She wanted to breathe. And I am not going to apologize for supporting her. So when we chose to take our own vacation instead of joining them, it was because both my wife and I agreed that we needed time away, and I knew her family would have a hard time accepting it, but it was the truth and they needed to hear it, so I texted them back and said it straight. My wife did not want to spend her vacation with them, and neither did I, and the decision was ours together, so it made no sense for them to blame her alone, and I added that if they had treated her with even a little basic decency instead of constantly treating her like she did not belong, then maybe we would not have wanted to distance ourselves. So if they needed to blame someone, they could look in the mirror. And even though the texts came from Sandra's phone, I knew the rest of the family was fully behind her because they all acted like I had been brainwashed or something, like my wife was pulling the strings and forcing me to walk away from them. Which could not be further from the truth. And after I sent that message, I had no interest in going back and forth with any of them, so I blocked every single one and focused on enjoying the rest of my time off, which I had earned and was not about to let go to waste because of their drama. And when I told my wife about the messages, she told me not to even bother responding because they were never going to see things clearly, and the more we tried to explain, the more they would twist things around and make it sound like we were the problem for wanting normal boundaries, and that was never going to change, not with the way they were, always turning everything into a crisis. So we finished our trip and came back last night, and it had actually been one of the best breaks we ever took, but the peace did not last long because his family came back from their trip the next day, and as soon as they were back, they wasted no time trying to stir up trouble again, and we had blocked them everywhere, on our phones, social media, everything, so they had no way to reach us while we were gone. But now that we were all back, they showed up in person, and it started right after work. We were tired, barely got through the day, and suddenly someone is hammering the doorbell like it was an emergency, and we both knew who it was before we even opened it, and sure enough, Sandra was standing there, arms crossed, angry expression, like she had every right to be there, and we told her we were not in the mood to talk, that we had a long day and did not want to get into anything, but she pushed right past us and walked straight into our living room like she owned the place. And that is when I snapped. I told her to leave immediately, told her what she did before the vacation was not okay, and I had no interest in hearing her blame everything on my wife again. But instead of listening, she told me to shut up and said she did not come to talk to me, she came to speak to her son and I needed to stay out of it, and I told her she was not going to talk to me like that, not in my own house, and apparently that set her off because she started screaming at me, accusing me of trying to isolate her son, said I wanted to turn him against his family, said I was just waiting for a chance to ruin everything because I could not stand how close they were, and she called me a psycho and said she was there to rescue him before it was too late, and I had no right to stand in the way because I was not family, and I told her I was actually glad I was not part of her family because it felt more like a cult than anything else, and that was it. She lost it, lunged at me, grabbed me by the hair, started attacking me right there in our living room, and my wife jumped in and separated us, had to physically push her mother out of the house, but even as she was being forced out, Sandra kept yelling, calling me names I will not even repeat here because they were disgusting, and once she was out, she stood in the front yard screaming at the top of her lungs that I was destroying her family, and she was not going to allow it, and it was only when we called the police and the officers arrived that she finally stopped shouting, and then suddenly she switched from yelling to begging, said we should not press charges, that she did not mean it, but it was already too late because we had both decided we were not letting it slide, not after she attacked me, and I was not badly hurt, so chances are she will not get much more than a slap on the wrist, but at least it will be on record now, and maybe next time she thinks twice before putting her hands on someone. So they took her away and she was crying by then, which was pretty wild considering she had been threatening us just moments earlier, and after that, my wife and I sat down and started looking for legal help to get a restraining order because clearly she had lost it, and we were not going to take any more chances, and we also figured it was time to move, something we had talked about before but now it felt urgent, and we started looking for a place that would be better for both of our commutes and farther away from her family because we were done with all of them, and now it has been a couple of hours since the arrest and nobody from their side has said anything yet, but we know it is coming, and yeah, maybe they will disown her over this, maybe they will write us out of everything, but honestly, it is worth it because Sandra needed to learn that there are consequences, and I do not feel bad about what I said or what I did. She brought it all on herself. A few days have passed and we got the restraining order approved, and we have been busy moving into a new place, court stuff, appointments, packing. It has been chaos, but at least it feels like we are finally taking back control, and Sandra ended up getting off with just community service since I was not injured badly, but her family took that as an excuse to spin the whole thing, went around telling everyone they knew that I had provoked her, that this whole thing was some setup where I baited her into hitting me so I could call the cops and ruin her life, and somehow I am the villain now even though I was the one who got attacked in my own home, and it does not make any sense. But that is the story they want to run with, except most people are not buying it, and slowly everyone is starting to see them for who they really are in cutting ties, and honestly, when I said Sandra ran a cult, I was not exaggerating, and I am glad I had the chance to say it to her face, and I would say it again if I had to, even if she tried to slap me again, because she needed to hear it, and I meant every word, and with the restraining order in place and us moved out to a new address they do not know, blocked on everything, out of sight and out of reach, things are finally quiet again, and if I am being real, I think my wife is more relieved than I am because she always said living near her family made her feel trapped, and I get that now more than ever because if my parents acted like that, I would run too, and at the end of the day, I am just glad we are out of it and moving forward.